This is the World Innovators Podcast with your host, Donna Peterson.
Good morning, everyone. The sun is out here today, and I have to tell you, I am so excited about this interview I have going on today. I am going to be interviewing Sandra Bravo, who is the senior lecturer at Babson College and the founder of 440K. But before I get started, my name is Donna Peterson, and you are listening to the World Innovators Podcast, where normally I speak to business executives and business owners all over the world about what is going on. But this month, I've decided to veer off a little bit. With Thanksgiving at the end of the month, I thought it was a great time to look at mindfulness. And especially for professional women, I feel like we're always running around like crazy. And are we really in the present? And one of the major components of mindfulness is giving and finding a purpose of giving. And that's where my guest comes in. So I can't wait to introduce you. Good morning, Sandra. How are you?
Good morning, Donna. I'm fine. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. You're going to offer so much to this interview because it's an area I'm passionate about finding different areas to give, whether it's money, but time, energy, whatever it is. So I can't wait to hear about the 440K. But before I get started, my first question for you is, as a senior lecturer, how do you handle your professional and personal life? How do you find a good balance in that?
Well, I think that is probably one of the most difficult things we deal with, particularly as women, but for all people, to manage that. And when I was younger, I thought, well, if I just get the kids a little bit older, if I just if so-and-so who isn't well in my family just gets better, somewhere on the other side of everything was where the peace was. Mm-hmm. And I think when you're working and you're raising a family and you're doing all of these things, time goes by so quickly and you're so caught up in everybody else's world. So as women, we try to take care of our spouse and our kids and our jobs and our house, and it becomes overwhelming. So I think in order to get balance, one of the things I've learned that's most important is really the relationships that you nurture with other people, the give and take relationships, getting away from, people with a lot of drama, people who constantly need you and just suck the energy from you.
I was just about to say energy suckers.
Yes, and there's so many. And I think as someone who was raised the way I was raised, which was great to be kind to people and to help people all the time, I sort of felt responsible for doing that, even if I had other things going on in my life. And so, as you get older, you start to say, okay, this isn't working anymore. And so I think nurturing the relationships, particularly with your spouse, as well as your kids and other family members, but, keeping those relationships with friends, being very choosy about who you're with, really makes a difference in terms of finding the balance, because you can have give and take relationships where you're there for each other, but there's a lot of fun in there and it's a two-way street. And I think that's hard to do. It's hard to find those people, but I think as you get older, you start to be more choosy about who you spend time with.
Yeah, I totally agree. Last week I did a talk on guarding your time. And one of them was that, find the people in your life. I'm not saying offer value, but, they don't drag you down. Like always, right. Like you said, if it's always drama or they're always complaining, that zaps your own energy. So you have to make sure that the people around you, one, I like to say, have a similar interest, because of course that's helpful, but they have that energy or that thriving to go on, let's do something great in the world. And, you have to guard your time and say no to those other people.
You do. Where you spend your time is important. I also think, time spent, by yourself doing things that take your mind off of things. things. So, for me, it's reading. I, over COVID, read like 100 books. And it's just, I read cozy mysteries, the whodunits that are really nice. Someone dies nicely, not the ones with all the horrible violence in them, but in my brain, I like to figure things out so I can get lost in a book. And, taking a walk in nature, doing the things that make you take a deep breath, get away from the computer, get away from the phone, find some balance. I think spirituality makes a difference, finding the light, finding the goodness in the world as opposed to being dragged down. Yeah. I just think there's a lot of things you have to do almost on a daily basis. Of course, exercise, which I hate to do. But I make myself go for a walk several days a week. If I never exercised again, I'd be perfectly happy. I hate to admit it, but that's
I have to tell you, I'm the absolute opposite. I love working out. It's like it's like a path. So you to books is me to working out.
Right, there you go.
So now I have to ask you, with your books, were they hardcover books or were they audibles? Like, how do you read your books?
I'm a big library. I don't believe in collecting books. I don't believe in collecting many things because I think books need to be read. So I'm a big, fan of libraries. Public libraries are wonderful things. But during COVID, the libraries closed down. So I just started downloading them on my phone. And I would just read on my phone. And then if I wake up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m, which I do a lot with a lot of things on my head, in my brain going, don't worry, there's this, there's that, there's something else to worry about. I had my phone right next to me and I'd just pick up my phone and I'd read for an hour and I didn't have to turn the light on and bother my husband. And I could just read my book. And then when I got tired again, I'd go back to sleep. And so it was for me, it just took my mind off things like playing with my dog, right? Stress release. But you have to find the things that work for you and be kind to yourself about it. And that's hard to do because I feel pulled in a million directions and I feel like, there's so many things I need to do, for the world, for my job, for many things. And it's very hard, I think, for people to make the time.
It is hard. And, if you listen to the media or you look at social media, everyone says, oh, you have to be doing this. And, this isn't just in your personal life. Now, I guess I am bringing a little marketing, but even like marketing or companies, everyone's like, you've got to do this. And I'm like, well, no, just like every company is different. Every individual is different. And what they need to be doing. So like for you to get into that calm space, it's reading a book. For me, a long workout or, cross country skiing. Of course, I do like to read. I don't want to say I don't read. I do like to read, but that workout thing is very important to me. And then the other thing you touched upon are those long walks alone. And so when I'm talking to companies about determining their mission statements or their whys, I'll tell them, fill out the worksheets I've given you. Now step away, go out for a long walk by yourself, no technology, no other human beings, and think about how you answered those questions. And so you're right, sometimes those long walks really help you digest what you wrote. Are you on the right path? Or maybe, I forgot this one part. I really want to go this direction. So that helps to settle your brain.
Yes. And that's exactly what you need to do, is to settle your brain, because my brain is always going off in 100 directions. I mean, even when I sleep, it's going, I'm dreaming all the time. I'm just not someone that can just take a deep breath. And that's exactly what I need to do, is just take a deep breath. And then when I feel myself getting crabby, I'm like, okay, now I need to just put everything down and, go for a walk or spend time with my husband. Just find something to just take my focus off of all the things that I could be doing in the moment, because that's endless. Like the things that are on your desk, the things that are in your house, the things you need to do, it is endless.
Yeah.
And so you have to say, okay, I'm done at the end of the day. And I would say my husband and I are pretty good at that. The end of the day, we're done. We're either both working or we're both sitting. Yeah. And I think, having a strong relationship with your spouse is key to keeping your sanity.
Yeah. Well, you're right, that constantly going. And I have to tell you, I saw a statistic recently that said 50% of the time we're all thinking of something else while we're doing. Because I always thought there was something wrong with me. Like there was times I would say to my husband, he's like, what's wrong? I said, could you just get it to stop? Get my head to stop. Like I'm like, I can't sit still because I think about like Sunday nights. My issue is most people are like, oh, it's the weekend. I'm like already dove into the week. I'm like, oh my goodness, what do we have? What do I have to do Monday? What do I have to do? You know, it's like, just stop. But easier said than done.
Much easier said than done. And that's the problem. And sometimes I'll say to my husband, we'll have a conversation, but my brain goes to what I need to do for the 440K project or something else. And he'll be, 2 or 3 minutes into the conversation and I will apologize and say, I'm sorry, honey. I have no idea what you just said, and he gives me grace. He understands that's the way my brain works. I'm not trying to shut him out. It's just the way. So I have to stop and refocus. And I'll say, I'm sorry. Can you just say that again? Because I just totally missed the whole thing. And he's so good. He's like, okay. And he'll start over and I have to force myself onto that because I have so many things on my mind, but it's not healthy otherwise. You have to just
not
take a breath and stop and say, okay. And I think too, if you, one of the things I learned to do is to get rid of, if you will, or say no to all the little things people ask you to do, because you can just accumulate things to do this for this person or that for. After a while, I was like, you know what, I can't do that. Or if I be quiet, somebody else might volunteer. I was always sort of the first to say, I'll do it. Now I kind of sit back and kind of wait and see. And most of the time, somebody else offers to do it, which is fine.
Right.
Because in order to make room for the big things that you need to work on, you have to not have a list of 30 things, small things that you need to do.
Right.
And when you figure that out, you've now opened up a window of opportunity to work on the bigger things.
Yeah. I think Warren Buffett has a great quote, and it's again about guarding your time, but guarding your time and make sure that where you're using your energy is headed towards your goal or your main objective. Because when you have young kids and you're in the schools, forget it. They need something every moment, which is great. And everyone should volunteer. But if you say yes to everything, that's where you get messed up. And this is the whole reason why I started my whole search years ago for inner peace, because I felt like you're working, you're dealing with the kids. And I'm like, am I enjoying any moment of this? And of course, you're enjoying some of it, but you know what I mean? It's like, when I was with my children, I always felt guilty I wasn't at work. When I was at work, I was guilty I wasn't with my children. So it's like, you're always someplace else. And I've gotten better at being aware of where I am and what I'm thinking about. Even this weekend, I was gardening. And as I was gardening, I started to think about, Toastmasters. I'm part of Toastmasters. And I'm like, no, bring it back. Think about these dead, black-eyed Susans that you're cutting and, try to be right here, right now.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's very hard to do. But once you start to do it, I think a decision factor for me, let me put it that way. Now with what I'm asked to do and all the things I have to do is I ask myself a simple question. Is this a life well lived? If I do this activity, is this a life well lived? And I look to my heroes. That's really important for me to say they had lives well lived. So what are they doing or what did they do that made it so? And that kind of keeps your perspective on the big things that are important.
Yeah, that is great advice for all women, and especially, younger women who might be just starting their career. What great advice that is. Matter of fact, I wish I wrote it down because I'm going to use it for myself to keep, but that is wonderful. Thank you. That's great. So now the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is you recently founded 440K, and I wanted you to tell us a little bit about that and why did you start that?
So the 440K project was a dream of mine for many, many years. So when I was in college, I was a big sister. Catholic Charities had a foster care system, and they came to our college, it's UMass Dartmouth, and they asked to have if we wanted to be mentors, basically like big sisters, big brothers, that kind of thing. And there was a little girl, and her name was Kathy, and her mother was a drug addict and a prostitute. And so Kathy was taken out of the house, and she was living in this place, part of Catholic Charities, I believe, at the time. And I said, sure, I'll do it, and she was 13, and she wouldn't talk to me. And no matter what I did, I brought her around campus, and we got an ice cream, and we did all the things, and she never said a word. She just wouldn't say a word. She was so traumatized. And I had this beautiful cloth doll that my grandmother gave me, and talk about, one of my heroes was my grandmother. She was a very strong woman. In fact, today would be her birthday. She's gone now, but today would be her birthday.
Nice.
Very fitting. And so the beautiful cloth doll that I had, Kathy kept looking at it. So I picked it up off my bed and I gave it to her. And she just looked at me. And then she said, "Thank you, Sandy." And I remember thinking, it meant so much to her. And it was just such a simple thing. And I remember thinking, somebody's got to help these kids. And then when I got married, my husband and I were, talking about things that were important to us, and we were talking about children. And I had never told him that in the back of my mind, I always wanted to adopt a child, maybe an older child, because Kathy just was in my heart. Yeah. And he just looked at me and he said, I think it would be a good idea if we adopted an older child. And Donna, I literally was shocked because I had never mentioned it to anyone. And I looked at him and I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, maybe we can have a child and adopt an older child. I think that would be a great idea and a great thing to do." And I literally, for a minute, I just couldn't breathe. I couldn't believe he said it, because nobody says that.
No.
And so I had some health problems. And so we said, well, we'll just go to the adoption part rather than having one and adopting one. So we moved to that. And when I was in there, the quote unquote training that they give you to be an adoptive parent really opened my eyes to the world that these kids have to deal with. They have to suffer tremendously, and they stay in foster care for years. And the level of abuse they experience, and the separation and the loneliness, and no one really gives them what they need. And now we know so much about mental health and the trauma that is endured. And so after we adopted our kids, it was always on my mind that I need to fix this, but it seemed so overwhelming. I mean, how do you fix the foster care system? Mm-hmm. And I would tell people, I really want to do this. And my friends know me. So they were like, I know you can do it. And I would think, how can I do this? How can this be? And, lo and behold, many things occurred, and I developed a network of people who could help me with this. Mm. But all along the way, beautiful little things happened that led me to this 440K project effort. So one of the things that happened was my son had been sick for a couple of years. I was a marketing consultant. I had my own business. I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit. And he was sick for a couple of years. And I was teaching adjunct, and I had my consulting business because I enjoyed teaching. So I was adjunct at BC. And then I actually quit everything except for one client when my son got sick, because it took us a while to get him physically straightened out. And he was home all the time from school. He's just little. So we got that straightened out, and he was better. And I said, one night, I said to my husband, I can't wait to go back to work, but I think I'd like to reverse it. I think I'd like to teach full time and do a little consulting on the side, and maybe do something, for my foster care idea. And the next day, the division chair at Babson, which is where I got my graduate degree, called me because I used to work with her at BC, literally the next morning. And she goes, we have an opening for a full-time position at Babson College. Would you be interested? And I remember I looked at the phone, Donna. I actually looked at the phone and I was like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I would. And I got hired at Babson. And I realized when you have a passion for something, you have to network and you have to start telling people. But I was almost afraid to say it because I'm thinking people are going to laugh at me. Like, no one can fix foster care. Like, they're just going to say, you're a crazy lady. And I thought, well, I'm just going to take that risk. So I started telling people about foster care. And of course, they were shocked. I mean, the statistics are shocking. And a friend of mine at work gave me a book called A Chance in the World, which is Steve Pemberton's book. So he was in foster care for years, never got adopted, wrote all about his harrowing experience. I mean, he was beaten, he was abused, he never got adopted. He wrote this book. So then another colleague of mine, a good friend of mine, Angela Ball, who's on my board of directors, she ran the MLK program. We have a legacy day for Martin Luther King. She said, let's bring Steve in to speak. So the author of the book, Steve Pemberton, came to speak. And one of the finest moments, Donna, was when he was speaking. And so now all this networking through Babson, right?
Yeah.
He was speaking. And a friend of mine, Jane Lyons, who runs Friends of Children in Western Mass, she helps kids who age out. So nobody's adopted them. They're sunk. They get thrown on the street at 18. They don't have any resources. They have nothing. She helps them find jobs, get apartments, get some mental health counseling, all of that. She brought like 30 of those kids who had just graduated, who had just been basically released into the streets after being in foster care, and nobody loved them and nobody took care of them. So Steve spoke with them and he tried to encourage them.
Yeah.
He did such a good job. And so as we're there listening to his speech, he calls them out and he says, you can do this. Life is hard, but you can do this. And we believe in you. Stand up. And so all of those kids who had no one stood up, and 400 people in the auditorium stood up and gave him a standing ovation.
Oh, that's so beautiful. You're making me cry. I'm a very emotional person. And you
sorry.
You really should have warned me.
I know, I'm sorry. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. But, when you put it out there and you start to talk to good people and you start networking, you start to figure out that there are other people who care and there are other people who can help you.
Yeah,
and so as you know,
you got to put it out there in the universe. I'm a strong believer of that. You got to put it out there. You got to say it, and you got to say it over and over and over. And if you put it out there, I believe, you think it, you do it, it will happen.
Yes. And then you have to work 10 times harder than you even expected to.
but you're going to love every moment of it because it is a passion of yours, because you feel so strongly about it. And really, when it comes down to children, how can you not, because they didn't do anything wrong.
Nope.
And they just need some help. When I coached over the years, there were some people who had some horrific, not like the ones you were just talking about, but there were some children and all they needed was someone to listen to them every once in a while or give them some positive encouragement. And you saw such big changes in these children when you just took the time to listen to them and what they were going through. Yeah.
It matters. And when you think about the power of bringing good people to an organization and keeping a focus on what it is you want to do, it's amazing what can happen. So one of the other things that happened was we brought some speakers in, and one of them was Aaron Walton of Walton Isaacson, who owns an ad agency in several places. And he's a Babson alum. And so he came into Angeli's class to speak. And he, Angela introduced us and we were talking, and all of a sudden I had this feeling that he was going to be an important part of this organization. And so I literally was sitting down in her office, I can remember it to this day, and I tapped him on the shoulder and he looked at me, and he had just met me, Donna, just met me. And I said, does your ad agency, Walton Isaacson, ever do any pro bono work? And he said, do we need to talk? And I said, yes, we do. So we go out in the hall, and I can't tell you, my heart was racing. My hands were sweating. And I gave him, and when I get nervous, I speak really quickly. I gave him
I hear you.
You're right. I gave him my probably 2-minute elevator speech all about what happens, to foster kids. And I have this idea, whatever. And he just looks at me and he goes, okay, I'm in. Nice. And I was like, and then I had nothing to say. So I went from, because I'm thinking, does he really know what I'm asking? Because I said, I think we could do a nationwide, campaign telling people about foster care, and then I could work into fixing foster care and redoing the system. And so I came home and I was crying, and I said to my husband, oh my God, this guy just offered to do pro bono work for a national ad campaign for foster children. And I was so happy, and I went to sleep that night, and I woke up, Dawn, at like 5 in the morning. And I thought, oh my gosh, what if he didn't hear the words pro bono? What if he thinks, I'm in because, you're going to pay me? I'm thinking, I can't pay him for a national campaign. So I went to my computer about 5:15 because I was so stressed out. And I sent him an email and I said, Aaron, thank you so much, for offering to do pro bono work on behalf of this, and this is before I had the 440K Project Incorporated. I didn't have anything. So he's on a wing and a prayer here. And I sat in front of my computer, and he's on California time. So I sat there for quite a while because he was 3 hours earlier than me. And I waited, and bing, there was an email back from him. And he said, you had me at foster care.
Oh, nice. That is so wonderful. Well, hopefully this interview is going to help get more word out about, 440K and get more people involved to help you out. Now, my last question for you is, what do you feel is the best way for women to find, a cause that is meaningful to them? Because foster care, obviously, I've had children. I know why that would be dear to me, but for other people, what would you suggest?
Well, one thing I think to do is look to the heroes that you have, right? So look to the people who have accomplished big things in history so that you have some perspective on what can be done. I'm not saying everyone has to do a big thing, but start big. So for me, Candy Lightner started Mothers Against Drunk Driving before there was social media, before, we had the ability to do what we can do now. Her daughter got hit by a car, run over on her way back from a church carnival, and killed and run over. And basically they were going to give the guy a slap on the wrist. Mm-hmm. So she said, we need to change the laws across the entire country. Can you imagine? Change the laws across the entire country at a time when people wanted to be able to drink and not be held responsible, because the law basically said, well, you were drunk, so you weren't responsible. Now, I know that's hard to believe, but look at where it is today, because she started that.
Right.
Oprah Winfrey, and she created, not only the book club to get people reading, which is near and dear to my heart, but, she created the Angel Network, and all these nonprofits were funded. Mother Teresa started, everyone told her she was crazy to start an order where she did this thing. You look at young people today, Greta Thunberg working on climate change, and Malala is getting, education for girls in places where that wasn't possible before. And then, look at what they've done, right? Study a little bit about what they've done and how they did it, for starters. And then you have to find the thing that either makes you really happy or totally makes you furious, and you think there's an injustice there.
Strong emotion, right?
Yes, because that's where passion is fueled.
Yeah.
And so you have to find, is it animals? look at all the animals they have to euthanize, especially in the South.
Yeah.
Can you get an education program started on that? Is it people homeless out on the street? The temperature's dropping.
Yeah.
What can you do in that regard? And what is it, when I learned about foster care, I was incensed. I thought, you can't do this to children. You can't put them on a shelf for years, bouncing from home to home to home. And then most of them end up in the street or in sex trafficking or in prostitution. Of course they do, right? Because that's how you set it up.
Right.
We need to redo that. And so I think if you start with your heroes, see what they've done, and then think about what either is, brings you joy, if it's planting trees, because you realize for climate change, and gardening is your thing,
Right.
or it's something that makes you furious and you think, I'm going to fix this so it's no longer a terrible injustice.
Right.
You can find the thing. And when you find the thing, I don't care if it's something you do 1 hour a month or you devote your life to it. You're a Jane Goodall. She's one of my heroes. Oh my gosh, she's amazing. She started in a time when women had no choice, to do anything except, stay home, be a mom. You're not allowed to work. You're not allowed to do, other things. You have no voice. And she, stood up and not only, for the chimpanzees, now it's all about world climate change. So she's grown, tremendously, her organization.
Yeah.
But find those things and do something. I just think if everybody does one thing, what a difference the world could be.
And I totally agree. And I know some people might listen to this and they're like, Donna, you're talking about we're rushing around, we're trying to handle everything with our professional life and our personal life. And now you're telling me to donate my time? I have no time. And for anyone who's listening, I so get that. I have been in that position where I'm like, I can't possibly, but what I have found is somehow you find a way to donate that time.
Yes.
It's as if my heart got 6 times bigger and life just seemed easier. And so I got more relaxed. I was happier. They were happier because I was volunteering, and everything else that I was rushing around to doing kind of fell into place too.
Mm-hmm.
So please, listeners, try to listen to both of us. And I understand it's hard to find time, but try to donate. Just like Sandra just said, whether it's an hour, a week, or an hour a month, whatever it is, just do something, because I always feel give and you will be surprised what you get back in return. And I'm not talking about money. I'm not saying donate money and you'll get more money back. I'm just saying you are going, just like yourself, you had all these things happen, and I call them God's winks. When those little things happen, like you said, all of a sudden the next day that Babson professor called and said, we have an opening.
Right.
To me, that's a God's wing, just because that's where my faith is. That's a God's wing saying, you know what? You are supposed to proceed in this direction. You're supposed to go this path, and it gives you that extra push. And you won't find that if you don't put yourself out there, even for a small increment of time.
Right. And I think a lot of the things that we spend time doing aren't worth doing.
Yeah.
So other things you get, I was a perfectionist. My house had to be perfectly clean. My hot car had to be perfectly clean. Everything had to be done. And now I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever, get a house cleaner or I won't do it, or it can wait,
It's livable. We don't need to do,
Yeah, and it's because my perspective changed. That's right. Well, my perspective changed. And this is so much more important than that. So you do find when you do something like this, that your perspective changes on all the things you're doing now. And you figure out what's more important. And again, what is it you're doing that makes it a life well lived?
Yeah.
Cleaning my house, not so much a life well lived, although I really do like it clean.
Yeah, but like you just said, clean your house, help some children.
Yes.
And you want to think about the world for the future. What's going to make a difference? Is it really your clean house? Because no, you know what? You're sorry to say, but your house could be gone in 10 years. I don't know. But these children, go out into the world. And someone from my church said, it's like a pebble. You throw a pebble into a pond and it's a ripple effect. And so
Yes.
you help one child and it'll ripple through. Just like I'm doing this series and someone's like, why are you doing it? I'm like, if I can help one woman with that balance of life, they're going to go out, they're going to be in a better state, or maybe they're going to pick up a cause from our podcast today and think about it. It's going to trickle out.
And it's so funny. That's another God moment, because I use that analogy of dropping a pebble in the water all the time with my family, with my friends, and with my students in class all the time.
Wow.
It's just interesting that you picked that. It just confirms that we're doing the right thing. To me, it confirms that we're doing the right thing.
Well, it is. You got reinforcement there. You know, when you get those little like coincidences, it's like, okay, yeah, this is it. This is the path.
That's it. Because you need that to keep going, because it's hard. You know, it's hard to always do the right thing. And it's hard to, take on, big issues. But at the same time, about the time when I think I can't do this anymore is when I get something that occurs that gives me a boost. Somebody else I meet, or someone else, just like your podcast today, somebody else that's like-minded. And then I get, filled up with happiness again, and then I keep going.
Yeah.
And that's really important, because, sometimes you work so hard at something, and if you don't see a reward from it in terms of movement towards your goal, it gets really exhausting. So you have to be surrounded by the right people.
Yeah, well, it's easy to get discouraged. And when I talk to corporations about their objectives, and I said, you have to have a strong why for exactly what you're saying, because business, just like life, is very hard, and you're going to have challenges. That's life, but if you have a strong enough why for business, your mission, if you have a strong why you want to accomplish that, or with the 440K, you're going to push through those tough times, and you're going to have bad days. But at the end, you're thinking about those children, like we just talked about. If there's one child you help, it makes it all worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right. And if we can do that times 440,000 kids in foster care, even better.
Nice. Oh, so obviously that's where you got your name.
I did. Yeah. I sort of woke up in the middle of the night. I had a team of people that helped me, and we batted around a lot of names, great names, but nothing seemed to work. And then I woke up in the middle of the night, which is always when I get my good ideas. And I thought, there's 440,000 kids in foster care. And I thought, 440K project, that's going to work, because people are going to say, what does the 440,000 stand for? And I'm going to tell them, that's how many children we have in foster care right now. Because the response always is, you're kidding me. Nope. That's how many kids we're dealing with. And there's 111,000 up for adoption that nobody wants. 111,000.
Wow.
And one of my goals is, let's make that zero.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that. I love the mission. Matter of fact, I'm going to go, as you're saying this, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a social post. What is 440K? Put a big question mark, and then, put it in. So.
Yep. And our website is 440kproject.org.
.org. Okay. Does everyone hear that? 440kproject.org. Please check it out. All right. Well, Sandra, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It's lifted me up. It makes me want to go out and, find a new purpose, but I hope it entices other people that are listening to this to jump in, find their passion, and really give. Let's all give.
That's a wonderful sentiment. It's right before Thanksgiving. And thank you for giving me time, Donna, to be on your podcast. I really appreciate you doing some great work too.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Okay,
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the World Innovators Podcast. For more information about today's topic, email us at dpeterson@worldinnovators.com or call 860-210-8088. And please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode.